All right, everybody. Hello. Let me just... There we go. That should be good. Okay. I have to sit close to the window then. Okay, cool. Alright, let me go to my YouTube channel to see your guys' comments. My channel, hit that thing, turn down the thingamabobbin. Alright, hello Mike, hello Isaiah, hello Kevin, Goofy Rolls, Thomas Brooks, Mod Cat, Jacob, Ocean Liner Dude, Mark, NSSR Railfan, Steve, Evan, Ozzy. Ozzy, you asked about the weather. We're at the edge of the Arctic blast that's currently hitting the United States. So I would say that currently... right now it's 33 degrees Fahrenheit outside with some gusts, some wind gusts. Not bad. And then tonight it'll drop down to, I think, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty cold for this area. And then tomorrow is going to be even colder. So tomorrow the high is going to be, I think, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and the low is going to be either 20 or 19 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's going to be pretty cold. Snow is not guaranteed, but if it does happen to rain during that time, you can bet it'll turn into snow. Around this time last year, we had snow, so I'm hoping for some snow. Alright, Pookie Smoochie's here. Hi, Alex. Just wanted to say I'm an army wife, and my husband is gone a lot, but your live streams are a constant I can look forward to. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Well, good luck to your husband that is out on deployment. Believe me, I know how difficult that is. Vincent says, hey, Alex, what happened to your video about the overratedness of the Normandy and the United States? Only Titanic is there. Only Titanic, as if I was talking about how overrated Titanic is. I guess the Titanic video is kind of talking about how overrated it is. The Normandy video I took down and I made it for members only because of the fact that I think people took it the wrong way. It was meant to be a thinking video where I presented an argument that was different from a lot of the pro-Normandy arguments out there. The idea was that it was a test in tolerance to see how tolerant people are of other people's opinions, fully knowing that in the video I mentioned that my opinions are not fact. And it was not well received. A lot of people did not like the things I said about Normandy. And I think they misunderstood the point of the video. Because while the video was named Why I Hate SS Normandy, I don't actually hate SS Normandy. I just don't like it, but I don't hate it. And that was kind of the point of the video. But a lot of people did not pick up on that. And so I realized it was not a good video to have out, for very long. So I removed it, and it's for members only. There's also a sequel video called Why I Love SS Normandy, and that was going to be released as well. But once I removed the first video, I thought, why publish the second one? So I never published the second one. But yeah, there was always going to be two videos. Why I hate SS Normandy, why I love SS Normandy. So, but anyway, it was an artistic experiment, but it was not very well received. Let's see, Mike says, ice storm coming here tomorrow and Friday. Oh, I bet, yeah. Modcat says, Arctic blast for me is making a -4 here in Texas. Yeah, I believe it. I know we're supposed to get some 60-mile-an-hour winds here. And they're saying that the wind chill factor will make it seem like it's -5. Now, I have never been in such a cold before, nor have ever been a cold with the wind. So I have no idea how they gauge that, But I do know wind chill factor makes things feel colder, obviously, because any kind of warmth that is surrounding you is being blown off by the wind. So, Conrad says, Merry Christmas, everyone. I just read your year-end message, Alex. Oh, thank you. I hope you liked it. Yeah, I posted in the... let's get this started. I posted in the channel... Oh, what's that tab? Like a communication tab, or I forget what the name of the tab. But I posted a message in there about what you can expect on this channel for next year and stuff like that. And maybe I'll kind of go over some of that on this live stream, just because I know not a lot of people actually read that thing. They probably don't even see it. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Let's see here. Ray Ann says, hello, Alex and everyone. I really enjoyed the latest chapter in the book. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really good chapter. See, chapter 10 is where they're in the Pacific. Yeah, the end of chapter 10 and then the whole of chapter 11 is like tear-inducing. It's going to be really... There was a few times when I was reading chapter 9 where I was going to get choked up. Like, I think I actually, a few times in the recording, I did kind of get choked up a bit. And no matter how many times I re-recorded that, I couldn't stop. So I just had to make do with what I had. But yeah, chapter 10 and chapter 11 especially are going to be difficult for me to read because it's gonna be so sad. But you'll love it. You'll love it. That's why I love the book so much, because yeah, in the middle of the book, it's very fact heavy. So it's not so much emotional as it is just giving you a bunch of facts about the history of the ship. But then, the beginning and the end of the book are really, really good. And yeah, it's a tearjerker for sure. So Derpy says, even the layout is festive with its snowy white ground. Yes, thank you, Derpy. Let's see. NSSR Rail Fan says, here in Minnesota, and the weather for the high is 1 degree Fahrenheit. Low has constantly been -12 with wind chills of -20. Jeez. That is just incredible. Wyatt says, it's supposed to snow tomorrow. For me, it will be cold enough, hopefully. It stays till Christmas. Yeah, I hope it'll be cold and snowy for our Christmas here. Growing up in Southern California, the weather never changes. You might get a little bit more rain than usual during winter, but that's about it, there's no seasonal changes. So living up here, I really like it. It's so different, and then because of the seasonal changes, it feels like you can see time passing, which is great. I like that. Let's see. The chat kind of suddenly shifted. Isaiah Rodriguez says, what do you think of the Endurance ship? Is that the one that they found in Antarctica under the ice? I don't know much about it, but it sounds like an interesting discovery. Christian says, hi, Alex. Thinking about starting my YouTube channel called Historic Productions, where I'm going to be talking about history stuff and play some games on my channel, too. That sounds pretty cool. Carl, thank you so much. Mike. Yeah, a lot of people on this channel actually don't like the Normandy that much. And, I think it's great when we can share opinions, because let me tell you, there's been an overwhelming amount of opinions about Normandy being the greatest ship ever to exist. And, I think of it as, that's wonderful that there are people that love that ship so much. That is absolutely wonderful. Just as I think it's wonderful that there are people who love Queen Mary so much, and I think it's great when we all have different opinions, because then we can learn things that we probably never thought we'd learn about something that maybe we don't even like. So, there was a time in my youth that I really didn't care about Queen Mary. I didn't think there was anything significant about the ship. But, over time, that shifted. And obviously, I'm like the biggest Queen Mary fan there is in terms of just, being a nerd. But yeah, you know, the differences of opinion help us to kind of shift things. Maybe one day I'll be a big fan of Normandy, but at the moment I can appreciate the historicness of the Normandy. I can appreciate the technology that went into Normandy, but I don't find it as anywhere near one of my favorite ships. Alright, let's see here. Tyler's getting a severe snowstorm tomorrow. Goofy Roll says, Alex, I like to think you're responsible for all the new Cunard videos I've been seeing. That'd be kind of a cool thing to attribute. Conrad says, maybe Love-Hate of Normandy needs to be released together in one video. I think if I'm going to do anything about it, I should just completely rewrite it. Because, you know, like, I'm kind of like an artsy person. I like to think of things. I like a show to kind of challenge the way I think of something. And I thought that's how I wrote that episode. But it really just didn't come off that way to people. And so I think if I do release something on the Normandy like that, it will have to be severely rewritten to be better understood by more people. Let's see. Chris Surface says he can smell ice before it's near. Where have we heard that before? Liners of the Past says, my auntie used to live in an 1888 terrace in Australia. When you could turn the water on, the pipes would first vibrate, then rattle around, and then a big clonk would come, and then water comes. Oh, yeah, geez, yeah. That's the water pressure just clanging the pipes around. Shibert says, Happy Christmas, Alex. Do you know of any plans to relocate Scrap, the Scorpion, in front of Queen Mary? It's, well, you know, a lot of people have actually asked me about updates on the Scorpion submarine. It's the same update, which is that it's not currently owned by anybody in particular, and so the city of Long Beach is interested in removing the submarine. I don't think the city really cares if it is scrapped or saved. They just want it out of there, and so we don't actually know what will happen to it right now. Sorry, I'm trying to like do two things at once, and I'm not good at that. But the reason why we don't know what's going to happen to it is because it's not currently owned by anybody. Nobody is claiming responsibility for it. People are claiming that if, you know, one company says, oh, well, Urban Commons had responsibility. Urban Commons says, look, there's no paperwork. We don't have responsibility of it. So, you know, the thing is that without anyone laying claim to it, there's really no one to spend the money on getting rid of it or taking care of it. And that poses a problem, because the question is, does the city care enough about removing it to spend the money themselves to remove it, or not? And that's a really big, tough question. Imagine if someone left a abandoned car in your front lawn, you know, and you really want it gone, but you have no idea who the owner is, and nobody wants to pay to remove it, especially not you. I mean, your first reaction isn't going to be, oh, well, you know, here's $500, here, tow truck, take it away. You know, no. Your first reaction is going to be, let's find who this who this belongs to, you know. But the problem is that there's just nobody currently that owns it, because people are claiming that they do not have legal responsibility of it anymore. They gave it to this person, that person gave it to that person. And so the city is going through some processes to figure out if there is a legal owner and to force them to take responsibility of it. And if that doesn't happen, the city may have to pay out of their own pockets to remove it. But I know there's been just a lot of people saying, well, why didn't the city just remove it themselves? Because that means they have to pay for it. We're talking about $5 million worth of work to clean it up enough that if they try to remove it, and let's just say it breaks apart, which it might, trying to take it out of the water, because it is very, very badly corroded, that could pose an environmental hazard. And then the EPA will be all over their backs. So it has to be cleaned out properly, and then they'll have to hire the cranes that can haul it out of the water. I think that the city understands that the submarine is far too corroded to actually float it out of there the way it was brought in. I think it will have to be lifted out of the water and most likely scrapped right where it's loaded to. So if it's loaded onto the parking lot, they'll probably have to scrap it right there. Because that thing is huge. There's no driving it through the city, you know. It's going to have to be torn up, and it's not in any condition to float anywhere. So the city kind of knows that. They know that it's going to be about $5 million worth of work, and that $5 million could be better spent on the Queen Mary, which desperately needs it, you know. So they're kind of in between a rock and a hard place, you know, with that submarine. So we don't know when or how it's going to be moved, or if it'll be moved anytime soon. We don't know. There's been no updates on that because currently it is not the city's highest priority, though they do have people working on it, working to, you know, get it out of there. Let's see here. Hello, LMR Trains. Doing some work on my HO and HON3 layout this evening. Oh, awesome. Modcast says, what was Queen Mary's code in the shipyard? I don't know what you mean by code, but if you mean job number in the shipyard, it is 534 was her job number. Lori Jean Carlson, Merry Christmas, Alex. Merry Christmas, Lori. Willem says, am I late? Not really. I haven't even started brewing the tea yet, but these are hot enough. Let's go ahead and heat that water up again. Doc says, Merry Solstice, Alex. The book has been so good. Oh, thank you so much. I'm wondering if I can get all of it done before the new year. I'm actually wondering if maybe next week I can release 2 chapters and then just call it done, because I want that book done. And then I'll combine all the chapters into one video with chapter selections in it, so that way you can skip around. So I think that's what I'll do, is once I do chapter 11 and publish that, then I'm going to make one big video of all the chapters together. Kevin says, Christmas 2012, we've had a big ice storm and lost power for a day. Jeez. Let's move this here. Steve says, oh my god, Alex, it sounds like steam locomotives are blowing down over there. Why? Is it because of the kettle? Pour out half of that. Alright, fill that up. Alrighty. Just to make sure the cup is hot enough. You want to make sure your cup is preheated because... Oh, what am I doing? I need to put the tea in there. Alright, so... Today is going to be Lady Grey tea. I also just recently bought another tin of English breakfast tea as well as Irish breakfast tea. What's funny was I didn't finish the last tins, but they started tasting a little off, and I think it's because I just had them for so long. And when you think about it, like, I've had the breakfast and Irish breakfast tea tins since I first started doing these these tea times, so I think it was time to change them out. I think that's probably why they didn't taste so good last time I tried them. I should have opened one of those today, but I still have Lady Grey tea. So that'll be another 3 minutes on, or 2.5 minutes, on the T. Let's see. Mike says, big earthquake in California yesterday. Yeah, I heard. Carl, I don't answer questions like that because I don't want to create any animosity amongst my YouTube colleagues. It's kind of the same way that, you know, when actors, for instance, are asked who their favorite director is or who their favorite co-star is or whatever, they usually don't answer because they might have to work with people in the future. Let's see. Let's see. I don't know how to pronounce your first name, but I'll give it a try, and if I'm wrong, you can correct me, but Bijan? B-I-J-A-N? Hi, Alex. This is my first afternoon tea live chat. Happy to be here. Well, I'm happy to have you here. I think you said, I like Normandy personally, but I definitely like the Queen Mary more. Yeah, I would agree. Normandy is a beautiful ship. I can totally appreciate Normandy in the sense that like I always say, in the sense that I would appreciate, you know, the Vatican or, you know, the Sistine Chapel. But it's not a place I'd want to sleep in, you know? So that's kind of how I think of Normandy. Derpy says, if there was one moment in Queen Mary's history that could be made into a movie, what do you think that would be? One moment in her history. Let's see. I think it would probably have to be... Ow! It would probably have to be the time that she delivered 10,000 troops to the first battle at El Alamein in World War II. And the reason I say that is because that kind of is a climactic, you know, part of a story. I can see that being like, you know, the big climax of the story, and then, you know, the end of the war would be the downward resolution of the story. But the other thing about it is that you could kind of actually tell the story of the entire war through the eyes of the RMS Queen Mary, and then just use that first battle at El Alamein as kind of the main climax, you know? And then everything else that happened during the war would be kind of either a rising action or a falling action. So, yeah, I think basically the whole war would make a really good movie, but particularly if they focus on the first battle at El Alamein. I think that is probably one of the Queen Mary's greatest achievements. I mean, probably the other greatest achievement is being, like, the lead ship in Operation Bolero. So, you know, that is... Yeah, those are some pretty big war achievements when you really think about it. So, yeah. Air Arrow says, are you going to make a video on what you would do if you bought the Queen Mary in 1967? How you would manage the ship? I've made a few videos about how I think the ship should be managed, which I think kind of extends to how I would do it. And I do get a lot of folks on this channel who agree with me, but then there's a lot of folks some would even say some of them are the naysayers or the trollers, but a lot of them do not agree. I think everybody has their own opinion on how the Queen Mary should be run. And I can only speak from my experience in the hospitality and tourism industry, you know, and, you know, what little experience I have, you know, creating set pieces, attractions, operating tours, you know, that kind of thing. And then, of course, I went to school and learned hospitality and tourism and how it functions and where to follow the trends on the tourism industry and stuff. So I'd like to think that I have a good grasp on how the Queen Mary should be run. But the thing is there's so many people that just disagree, you know. They do not, you know, maybe they have a completely different idea. And so, I don't know. I don't think it'll be very well received. And so I think for that reason, I probably wouldn't want to specifically delve into a video like that. Not unless, like, maybe next year, if for some reason things are not going in a good direction for the ship, I might try to make another one of those videos to kind of try to influence somebody to make a good decision for the ship. But I think that the ship will be on a good heading, a good course. I still think they could make do with some of my ideas, but you know, I don't know. I might just be, as they say, spitballing. Yeah. Oh, let me serve myself a cup of tea. So for those that are new, because I know there's some people here who said that they're new, the reason why this is called a Cunard afternoon tea is because this whole tea set I have, which actually not the whole tea set is here. I realize a lot of it is still in the dish drainer. I washed it earlier. But this is part of a large China tea set that was on ships like Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, and possibly other ships such as, you know, Sylvania, and Caronia. Yeah, the ships of the 50s and 60s, basically. But it's designed in Art Deco style, because the original ivory ones, let's say the original ivory bone china for first class looked just like this, but then through the 50s and 60s, they made more whiter versions, and these are the white versions, so they're not as ivory colored as the originals. But yeah, so the oldest piece I have is from 1952, and the newest piece I have is from 1967. And yeah, I would say most of these, you know, most of these pieces of dishware, again, not all of it is here in front of me, but most of it is from Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. So, pretty cool. Depending on what tea I have, I will usually have milk in my tea. However, this Lady Grey is a very light tea, and it just doesn't go that well with milk, in my opinion. So, I only do a bit of sugar. Might even go really well with lemon, but I don't have any fresh lemon. Tyler says, Steve, do you know what Cunard was thinking of calling the second topmost deck the sun deck when only the end gets the sun? That's a good point. Did you know when they were designing Queen Mary, she was originally going to have 30 lifeboats? So for those that already know or don't know, Queen Mary in general was designed with 24. But yeah, she was going to have... Wait, was it 30? Yeah, it was 30. 30 lifeboats. Because there is a model, one of the finalized models before they actually started constructing the ship, that showed that there was 15 lifeboats on each side of the ship, and those extra lifeboats would have extended past the veranda grill and then almost to the end of the aft end of sun deck. I think though that they probably realized those extra boats were probably blocking a lot of the views, especially for guests of the veranda grill restaurant. And so I think because of that, they reduced the lifeboats to the minimum number that they could have, which was 24. So even then, with 24 lifeboats, the Queen Mary still had extra room for 43 more people. So there could have been 43 more people aboard the ship than the ship's maximum capacity, and she still had enough lifeboats for all of them. But yeah, nevertheless, 15 lifeboats. I'm sorry, 30 lifeboats, 15 on each side. So, interesting little thing. Liners of the Past says, I don't understand why jet travel took over. To me, traveling on an ocean liner would be much more comfortable and interesting. It is much more comfortable and interesting, but you have to remember that most people that take ocean liners are doing it for, they're on business or something where they need to get somewhere really fast. So for a lot of them, actually getting across the Atlantic was a matter of speed, not a matter of comfort. And then the other thing you have to remember, too, is, in the 1960s, airplane travel was spacious and comfortable. That was before the days when they tried to, to squeeze all the seats together until your knees were touching the seat in front of you. So back then it was comfortable. But yeah, so it was a matter of getting across the Atlantic fast. I mean, that's why ocean liners kept getting faster and faster, was because people wanted to get to their destination sooner. A lot of the people were on business, They were tycoons of sorts, going from country to country, business to business, that kind of thing. So that's why jet travel took over. And that's why jet travel will remain the top travel until some other mode is invented, like teleportation or something. It will stay the top, Ocean liners would now have their own niche if they were still popular, which the niche would be, I need to get somewhere, but I'm not in a hurry. That's the niche. So, let's see. Tyler says, please help me understand. I am having dozens of scenarios regarding Queen Elizabeth. I really feel her going to China doomed the ship. She should have stayed in Florida. I think it's easy to say that something is doomed when you're looking at it in hindsight. It's not like, when C.Y. Tung acquired Queen Elizabeth that, he knew the ship was going to be destroyed. He did not know. So it's easy to look back on it and go, oh, that's what doomed the ship. But you have to remember, in the context of its time, they thought this was going to be a rejuvenation. They thought this is how Queen Elizabeth will continue to stay on the seas. They were going to use her as a floating university, and she would have floated to several specified locations along the Pacific. And she would have remained sailing for maybe another 10 years or so, maybe even more. So, I don't want to say that's what doomed the ship. I just think that that's just one of the turn of events that led to her doom. So, you know, yeah. Yeah, that's really all I can say about it. Moonzer says, "Hey Alex, I saw your video on how kids can't do a lot on the Queen Mary. I am 11 and I like the Queen Mary. The only thing kids can do, my age, is look at the Lego model. I like the Lego model." Yeah, you know, that's true. There isn't a lot for things for kids to do. And I've mentioned in the past that there are ways to make Queen Mary's exhibits more interactive without making it kidsy. You know, I know that a lot of adults will go, "Oh, but I don't want to go to the Queen Mary if it's all like kids stuff." And it's like, no, there's a way to make the exhibits and attractions something for everybody, you know, without having to play down to adults. So one of those things is interactivity. You know, a lot of kids, they have their phones and their iPads and they like to interact with things. Disney is doing something, and they're not doing it everywhere, but one of the things that they're doing is, like, when you go to Galaxy's Edge, you would be able to, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, you would be able to use your phone, go into their Disneyland app, and then they had a special segment of the app that was dedicated to interacting with the new Star Wars land that they had. And you could play games to figure out, like, you know, stories about smugglers and things, and try to either help the smugglers or stop the smugglers and things like that. And when you work on that stuff on the game, you can see its effect in the real world. You could visit these locations around the land and see some kind of exhibit or thing that's been left behind that kind of plays into the story. Well, the Queen Mary can be done a similar way. You could have an app that allows you to interact with it as if you are someone from the 1930s, right? And you can play along. And let's say maybe, I don't know, I had this idea that maybe there was some kind of, like an Irish mob, because there were mobs in Ireland. Like, what if there was an Irish mob that was trying to get from the UK to the United States, and they had planned some kind of bank heist in New York or something, and maybe you needed to stop them or something like that, and so you end up going all throughout the ship to the various exhibits, and you have to sort through the clues on your phone. It reveals certain things in the exhibits. Maybe some of the exhibits are covered with a special kind of plastic that covers the glass. It becomes opaque, so you can't see what's behind the glass until you activate it on your phone. Then it becomes transparent and you can see what's beyond the glass, and maybe there's clues to the story that help you to resolve it, you know. And maybe towards the end of the story, you're finally able to gather all your evidence. It tells you to go to the captain, which means taking you all the way literally to the captain's quarters on the officer's deck, which is, I think, part of sports deck. And so, yeah, you go to the officer's deck, and then you go up to the cabin, or to the captain's cabin, for instance, do some more stuff on your phone, and, and maybe there's like a video or audio of the captain saying, "I'll handle this," or something, you know. So you can create a story, and it can be something that not just kids will enjoy, but adults will enjoy it too, because it involves going around the ship and seeing things you wouldn't normally see, and, you know, and maybe even activating certain stuff. Maybe part of the game takes you into the engine room. You play around with your phone and you can activate the engines of the Queen Mary through the use of projection effects, lights, and sound effects. You know, you activate the engines or whatever, you know. So there's interactivity through your phone. And that is something that I think a lot of people would enjoy, not just children. But that is a way that you can make it more attractive to children. So, yeah, I'm full of ideas on how to update the exhibits of the Queen Mary. If only someone influential will just ask, you know. So, yeah. see. Tyler says, I'm actually waiting till you're done with Queen Mary, Queen of the Queens. That way I can binge watch it. Yeah, you know, and if you want to wait just like an extra day or two after I'm done, I'll have all the chapters in one video. So that way you don't have to go from video to video if you don't want to. So, there we go. I was waiting for this to cool down because it was just molten hot. But very good. Jacob says, have you ever considered doing layout tours of other people's layouts? I think that would be very interesting for your channel. Indeed it would. Unfortunately, I only know one person that lives somewhat near where I am, where I can actually tour their layout. But I don't have a means to get around, you know. With schizophrenia, I can't drive. So I can't just hop in a car and go somewhere. So it really isn't kind of possible for me to do that, really. But yeah, it would be really cool. Let's see, people are talking about Olympic, traffic, and nomadic. Top impressive line says, Merry Christmas, Alex. I know I've been asking you a lot of would you rather questions, but would you rather sail on SS United States or SS America? I really would not like to travel on either. Like, if I lived in that time, in the 1950s, you know, and I needed to get across the Atlantic, I would not book, you know, the American line. I would book Cunard. So, but I guess if I had to, SS United States. And I think the only reason why is because it was a larger, newer ship. And I guess I would just want the notoriety of being on the SS United States. But that's about it. I dislike both of those ships equally. So, Chris Surfa says, I've had a Doomsday Prepper coffee yesterday, and that was 5 years ago. Still tasted great. Yeah, well, my tins are opened. They've been open for like almost a year now, so that's why I think it just doesn't taste good. It's just been exposed to air for too long. I don't... Ocean Liner Fanatic says, how did you get into ocean liners? I got into ocean liners by researching the RMS Queen Mary in 2020. So I know there's some people, like there was some guy who angrily commented on my channel, I think like 2 days ago. He was like, he commented on one of my videos about Titanic, and he said, stop pretending that you don't love the Titanic. Stop pretending that the Titanic isn't what got you into ocean liners. And I really didn't respond to his comment in any way that I think eggs that on. I just kind of explained to him that, yeah, I knew about Titanic as a child, but I never did any research on Titanic, ever. I still haven't really done any research on Titanic. If I come across a video that I think is interesting and I happen to watch it and the information happens to soak into my brain, then so be it. But I don't actively research Titanic. And it's because I think the ship is beautiful, but it didn't have much of a service life. It was destroyed, you know, on its maiden voyage. And I think what interests me about ships is not so much the way that they look, necessarily, I mean, you know, looks are part of it, but also really their service life, what they've done over their service life. That fascinates me the most. That's why I can appreciate, you know, ships like, well, let's not get into that. But anyway, but I would say that I'd visited the Queen Mary a few times in my life, but in January 2020 was the last time I visited Queen Mary. My friends had said, let's go, and so we went, and I thought, oh, I'll do a little bit of research and film a vlog and kind of talk on the vlog about some of the things I learned. And as I was doing that research, I just was very fascinated by the ship. It was really soaking in just how important the ship was. And then when I actually got there the next day and actually explored the ship, I saw the beauty underneath the grime, and I thought it was just amazing. I thought if this place was cleaned up, properly taken care of, it would be one of the most beautiful things we still have left on this world. And so I wanted to make videos about the Queen Mary and kind of discuss the history of the ship. And so I spent the next year, I literally didn't make a video about it till a year later. I spent a whole year researching the ship because I didn't want to put out videos that I didn't think were at least my best try at researching. So I did that for a whole year. The first person to ever help me with that was my friend Shiloh. He has the HenryHallFan channel where he posts music of the 1930s and stuff. There's a link to it in the description of this video. But yeah, you know, Shiloh taught me a lot about Queen Mary. And then I started meeting more people, such as, you know, Steve, you know, Blue Ribbon Productions, who's in the chat right now. And they taught me more and more. And I'm still learning. Every single day I'm still learning more about the Queen Mary. I hope to one day gain all the knowledge that there is about the Queen Mary. So, but in my research for Queen Mary, that led into other ships, and I think that some of those other ships were really fascinating to me. I'm not into every ocean liner, so I know some people are really hoping maybe I'll make a video about SS America or something, and I'm not interested in making a video about SS America. But I am interested in making a video about Oceanic from 1899, maybe one day a video about, you know, SS Atlantic. You know, I definitely have videos planned about Mauretania, Lusitania, Aquitania. You know, I have videos planned for eventually Carpathia and stuff like that. So lots of other ships are on the list, just not every one of them. But yeah. So that's kind of what got me into ocean liners, was actually Queen Mary, not Titanic. Titanic was the start, but it certainly wasn't the reason. Let's see. Oh, Steve left to go to dinner. See you later, Steve. Let's see. Hello, Elijah. Air Arrow says, it's a shame that Diners Club left while Queen Mary was being converted to museum and hotel. I don't think it's a shame. Diners Club was one of the reasons why Queen Mary was being destroyed, just inside and out. Diners Club is the reason why the third class dining room and the second class dining room are not available, because Diners Club said, let's close those places down, convert them to either refrigeration, dry storage, or general storage. You know, Diners Club is responsible for ripping out the Queen Mary's Turkish baths, and then installing a spa 2 decks above, which is just odd. Why not use the Turkish baths as a spa? You know, you could rip out what you need to rip out, but maintain it as a spa, and you can still say this was where the Turkish baths were. But, yeah, so Diners Club also destroyed the Veranda Grill and turned it into a fish and chips restaurant, which also sold hamburgers. And it took a lot of work in the 1990s to return that space to the Veranda Grill. And even then, they were only able to use inferior materials. So areas where there was stainless steel railing, they use wood that's painted with like a silver paint because they don't have stainless steel and, that kind of thing. So Diners Club really destroyed the ship. I am so happy that they were stopped before they did any more damage to the ship. So, Liners of the Past says, the main lounge should be restored with furniture and used to wait for your tour on the Queen Mary. I think I said this in the last live stream as well. I think the first class smoking room should be used as where you wait for your tour. Because like I was saying in the last tea time that we talked, or some other live stream where I talked about this, let me take a sip. The main lounge is huge. And it's got so much potential for doing other things other than being a waiting room. But the first class smoking room is designed for smoking, and we don't really do that on the ship anymore because it wouldn't be safe. So what else could it be used for other than a waiting room? And I think it'd be perfect if they put in at least period appropriate furniture into the first class smoking room. And then they installed a removable desk for the tour guides. They could turn it into the tour center. And after you book your tour, you could also wait there in the comfortable chairs and stuff like that. But the main lounge, I think, it should have its furniture put back in. But I like to see the main lounge used for multiple purposes throughout the day. As a place to have your afternoon tea, as a place to see live performances of bands, singers, magicians even, I don't know. And then at night, it could be a place where you see vintage movies or something, or just movies in general, because they have the ability to project movies onto the screen. So the main lounge should be used much better than a waiting room. It could be for multiple things throughout the day. That way, it's always busy in there, So, yeah, that's my idea. Elijah says, nice train. Thank you very much. Nobody's commented that you're seeing a different point of view. Normally, you guys are looking at the trestle, so nobody's mentioned that I changed the point of view. Alrighty, so Ocean Liner Fanatic says, if you had a choice to save an ocean liner before it was scrapped, what ship would you pick? It would be a very close tie between RMS Olympic and the original RMS Mauretania. It would be a very close tie. Because Olympic, I think, would be wonderful as the last ocean liner of the White Star Line. Still in existence, and as well as the fact that a lot of people would attribute it to being literally the closest thing there is to Titanic, still around. But at the same time, I would say Mauretania, because Mauretania had many more accolades during the ship's, time in World War I, and as well as just the achievements that Mauretania had while being on the ocean. She was a ship of many firsts. So I guess Olympic was as well. That's why it'd be such a close tie, because Olympic is a really respectable ship, and so is Mauretania. So I would have difficulty choosing. But it would be one of those two, that's for certain. Moonzer says, what happened to the SS Traffic? From what I understand, it was sold off, and then eventually, I think eventually it was scrapped after being sold off to somebody else. Moonzer says the SS Nomadic is apparently the only White Star vessel, in the world. I mean, technically yes. Queen Mary is technically a Cunard White Star ship, you know, from the merger. So you could, you know, Queen Mary was a Cunard White Star ship until 1950, from 1936 to 1950. So, I mean, technically Queen Mary is a White Star ship as well. But yeah, I see your point. An SSR Railfan says, hopping off, Alex. Make sure you check your email later. See ya, and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, too. I'll check my email. I know I have to answer a few emails that I got recently. Let's see. You know, the movie Titanic from 1997, they're going to be re-releasing it in theaters next year. I think before spring. So probably like February or March is when it will come back out in theaters. And it'll be, the whole film is being restored to 4K quality, which is something I've been waiting for several years because I want to have it on Blu-ray in 4K. So that'll be a big deal. And plus, it'll be the first time I've seen the movie in theaters since it originally came out. So that'll be really fun. Let's see. Sheridan says, are the passenger lists for crossings on the Queen Mary to the public? I think you mean available to the public. Technically, yes, because you can buy them, but it's not like there's a database somewhere where you can just like hop on and check. You would literally have to locate a very specific passenger manifest and then purchase it from a private collector. So, I mean, technically, yes, but it's not easy. Sheridan says, I'd love to stay in the cabin that the Prince of Wales and Mrs. Simpson used. Well, that is very well known. That is... I can't remember the name of the cabin, but the cabin is named as such on the Queen Mary. The Windsor Suite, there we go, Windsor, because they're the Duke and Duchess of Windsor. The Windsor Suite is where they stayed on the Queen Mary. So when the Queen Mary reopens, you can book a room on the Windsor Suite, and you can stay in the original... cabin suite that the Duke and Duchess of Windsor stayed in. Top Impressive Line says, Alex, I know a good ship that would go with your model train set since you couldn't add the Queen Mary. The CS Mackie Bennett, which is only about 20% of Queen Mary's size. Even still, 20% of Queen Mary's size, that's one-fifth of 25 feet is still 5 feet. That would be a 5-foot long ship. And that's too big for my layout. My layout is only 8 feet long, so it would take up most of the layout. Not possible. Let's see. Andrew... Well, Andrew said something, but deleted his previous message, so I have no idea what he's talking about. Where is... Ah. I lost my place. Ah, here we go. Oceanliner Fanatic says, before they removed the lifeboats earlier this year, I realized that some were missing a couple years back. What happened to them? So the Queen Mary arrived at Long Beach with only 22 of her 24 lifeboats. The reason why was because 2 of those lifeboats were removed in Southampton to make way for platforms, one on either side of the ship, to help lower passengers down into little ferry boats that could take them to the various ports along the last great cruise. So she only had 22 of her 24 lifeboats when she came to Long Beach. And then what ended up happening was that, let's see, they brought aboard a fiberglass lifeboat that was surplus in Long Beach. It was not belonging to Queen Mary or anything. It belonged to some other passenger ship that left it there at Long Beach or something like that. And Long Beach owned it, and so they put it on the Queen Mary. And they put that, let's see, in 1975. So I'm trying to remember everything in order of how it happened. But before they put that fiberglass lifeboat on, they had a lifeboat in space number 23. I'm trying to remember it all correctly off the top of my head. Space number 23, because they installed a brand new motor to lower the lifeboat for display. They lower it and they raise it up and lower it and raise it. I can't talk right now. They raise it up and lower it, and the first one broke in the early 70s. It broke from its moorings and collapsed into the water. Then what they did was they moved a lifeboat from space 22, moved it over to there, and in 1973 or 74, that one broke loose and fell into the water. And I think that's when they brought on the fiberglass boat. I'm trying to remember everything in order. I'm having so much difficulty remembering everything in order of how it happened, because the numbers aren't matching up right now. I'm trying to remember because there's 2 missing. One of them was the one that fell. The other was one that Disney took down in 1992 to, as they say, to make a fiberglass replica. But I don't think they ever intended to make a fiberglass replica. I think somebody who was in charge of the Queen Mary by Disney at the time, I think they took the lifeboat down and kept it, because nobody ever found that lifeboat again. So, yeah, I know that of the 22 that arrived in Long Beach, one of them, at least, of the originals, was the one that broke off the foals. Another one was removed by Disney to make a replica, as they say, and then it was subsequently lost. I don't think it was lost. I think it was stolen. But they say it's lost. And then there was at least another fiberglass boat, I think, that dropped from the foals in the 1970s as well. I have information on it. I did a video once about it. I don't remember what the video is called. I did it so long ago. But it had the research for it. So my friend Steve, who was in the chat up until a few minutes ago. Oh no. Hold on. Dang it, I missed it. I was looking for something on eBay to buy, and I was supposed to buy it a minute ago, and then I forgot. And I looked right now, and it was already sold. Well, that's too bad. Jeez. And nobody put in a higher bid. I could have got it for a really cheap price. Unbelievable. I missed it by a minute. That's frustrating. Okay, let's see. That question is really difficult to read. I would read it, but I don't know what it says. Let's see. Let's see. Now, Doc says, can you share any history of the attractions on the pier near Queen Mary? I'm not from the area, but saw an Alice in Wonderland attraction on a TV show about Long Beach. I could not tell you. I researched the Queen Mary, but not. But unfortunately, I don't research what was on the dock. I know that on the dock they had London Town, which used to be 3 times larger than it currently is. London Town was just a tourist area where you could buy stuff, you know. And then the Dome used to have the Spruce Goose or the H4 Hercules, depending on how you want to call it. But aside from that, I really couldn't tell you any more about it. Andrew Harrison says, how is the hull intact without dry dock? So, the Queen Mary is in remarkably good condition, despite the fact that she hasn't been dry docked since 1970. The reason why is because she has what's called a sacrificial cathodic anode system. All over the ship, there are a little over 40 anodes that were installed along the hull, all over the ship. And those anodes have ionized zinc plates. Those zinc plates absorb the corrosive nature of the salt water surrounding the ship. So essentially, the zinc plates absorb the corrosion, leaving very little left for the ship to have to endure. So that's why they're called sacrificial cathodic, because they sacrifice themselves instead of the ship. The other reason, too, is that when the Queen Mary came in to Long Beach in 1970, they had put an extra thick coat of that anti-fouling paint. Now, because the Queen Mary does not move anymore, there's very little reason why that paint would be like flaked off of the ship, because there's no rushing of the water like she would be on a voyage to actually, you know, hit against the paint and remove the paint. So the paint actually stayed on for a very long time. Most of it is still on there, actually. And the sacrificial cathodic anodes have protected the ship from corrosion. The other thing, too, is that it has also to do with the breakwater that surrounds the ship. You'll notice the ship is sitting inside of a wall of breakwater rocks. What that does is it prevents any ships or other vessels from colliding with the Queen Mary. It also prevents things like the wake from boats. It prevents that from hitting the Queen Mary, because there's something called the wind-water line. The wind-water line on a ship can be affected by corrosion very badly in terms of a museum ship because they always sit there and the same area is always being touched by wind and water. Well, if you can reduce the choppy nature of the water, you can actually reduce the chances of corrosion happening at that waterline. And so, if you actually look at Long Beach Harbor on a really windy day, you might see the harbor have choppy water. But where the Queen Mary is, it is still, just dead still. And in fact, the Queen Mary has no waterline corrosion because of that. As well as because up until the early 2000s, they were still painting the waterline of the ship. They would actually adjust the ballast tanks on the ship to lean the ship over by a few degrees so they could repaint the waterline of the ship. And they would do that on occasion every couple of years. And for that reason, the Queen Mary has no waterline damage like most of her other museum counterparts. And though they haven't repainted the wind waterline in almost 2 decades, it's still not been a problem. So those are the reasons why the Queen Mary is still intact. Last year, in summer, they wanted to inspect the hull of the ship to see how bad things look. And so basically they sent divers down there. The divers took special ultrasound equipment. And so they inspected the entire hull of the ship. They swam under it and everything last summer. No, not last summer. Summer of 2021. They swam underneath it, inspected all of it, both visually and with ultrasound, to determine how thick the hull plates are, make sure that there's no severe damage or corrosion happening, make sure if they can see any leaks, you know, because you can see the water rushing in if there's a leak. They didn't spot anything. They didn't see anything wrong. The ship is covered in algae and barnacles and stuff, but other than that, it's really not as bad as it might seem. And they believe that with a simple scraping off and repainting of the hull, she'll be just fine. Now, to double check this, what they've been doing this past autumn was they were actually emptying out all the ballast tanks on the Queen Mary to inspect them. Go down into the ballast tanks and inspect them to make sure that the hull plates, the outer hull plates of the Queen Mary, are fine. And so far they are. I have not heard anything back from the people to say that they have found any problem. The guy told me, you know, if there is a problem, we have people that will come in and actually do the necessary repairs. They can do repairs with water still on the ship. Makes it more difficult, but it can be done. The Navy does it all the time, actually. If the Navy does not have the time to put a ship in dry dock to do some basic outer hull repairs, they will actually install... I forget what they call it, but it's a watertight compartment that they attach to the ship to do the repairs. They can do that for Queen Mary for spot fixing problems. As far as I know, they have not found any problems yet, as well as the fact that the ship has never had a seawater leak. They know because they've checked all pooling water and leaks on the ship. It's all been fresh water from the hotel plumbing system, which was not taken care of. Yes, it did rust out the tank tops of the ship, but remember the ship is double hulled. There's an outer hull and an inner hull. The inner hull is rusted a bit because of the leaking, but not so bad that someone will fall through it. And the outer hull is so far in very amazing shape. So far, all the engineers who have checked the Queen Mary as best they can have said that she is in remarkable shape for being almost 92 years old at the keel. So, yeah, she could definitely use another dry docking to clean off those barnacles and apply a new coat of paint. Maybe replace a plate or two that might be a bit thin. But they haven't found any reason to believe that there is anything to worry about for the next... 10 years or so at least, as long as they maintain what they have and keep the sacrificial cathodic anode system working. Sorry, I know that was a really long explanation, but that's why I don't explain it very often, because it's a really long explanation. Let's see. Oh, I have to go back up because... and then the question for why new ships get frequently docked for hull inspections, dry docked for hull inspections, but Queen Mary, again, is not an operational ship. She does not sail, so there is no reason that she would have the same maintenance issues as an operating ship. An operating ship plows through the water. The water rips away at the anti-fouling paint. Well, that doesn't happen with Queen Mary. The paint stays because there's no water, rushing against the ship. So she actually only needs to be dry docked every 25 years, not every 2 to 3 years like a normal ship would. So, yeah, that's why. Merry Christmas, Derek. Matthew says, I wish Long Beach would restore the Long Gallery and Ballroom. Yeah, I wish they would do that too. Andrew says, love your channel, Alex. Will you sail on Queen Mary too? I want to sail on Queen Mary too. We'll see. I'm going to do everything I can to save up money for that. Ocean Channel says, what do you think about the Poseidon Adventure? I love the 1972 movie. I wouldn't want to watch it frequently, but I did like it when I saw it. Jeffrey Charles says, hi, Alex. I was so bummed when I read that you're never making Disney videos again. I never like to say never, because I don't know if I will. And the thing was I was going to make a post like that at the start of 2022. I was going to say that don't expect new Disney content videos from me because I may not do it. And then lo and behold, I made 2 more videos after that. So I never like to say never because I end up always doing something anyway. But I wanted to warn people that there's a possibility that they wouldn't see any new Disney content videos on this channel. I'm not a Disney fan anymore. I had to finally just admit that to myself because, for the longest time, I was trying to get back into the groove of it, but I just don't care anymore. It's just become something where the park is unrecognizable to me. It's not the same place I used to enjoy when I was a kid. As well as the quality of the park has been going down and down and down, and the cast members are only getting treated worse. It's hard for me to be happy and enjoy learning more about the park or talking about the park when so much negativity is surrounding it. As well as the fact that you have to remember, I've talked so much about Disneyland in the last 20 years. Just so much. Because literally, I think, this year would be the 20th year since I started researching Disneyland. So, this would be 20 years later. I've talked so much about Disneyland over the last 20 years. And with the park's quality only going down and down, I just got tired. I got really tired. And then it's also very discouraging when I make videos about Disneyland and then I don't have the views I used to have. I used to have 3 times as many views of people that would watch it. They would enjoy the videos, but not as many people would enjoy the videos anymore. So it was almost like I was doing all this work and then no one was seeing it, And so it was just sad all around, And then, of course, having to move 1,100 miles north, and I don't know when the next time I'll ever be able to see the park again, Even if I had the money to go down to Southern California, which in itself is a fortune, I don't have the money to visit the park. I've been priced out of it, which is fine, I don't need to visit Disneyland. It's not like it's not like air, I need air, but I don't need Disneyland. And so I think I just finally had to admit that it wasn't possible for my channel anymore, especially since the viewership isn't there, And so, I wanted to warn people that, You know, if you're staying only for the Disney content, it might never happen again. But then again, there might be something new. You know, one thing I really want to do is I have a 4-part series about the Disneyland Railroad, and I want to turn that into one long video because I notice that people watch the first video, but they don't stay to the 4th video. And so I want to turn that into one video. So that might be the one and only thing you'll see in 2023 when it comes to Disney content. But the only reason why I'd be interested in doing that is because it's about railroads, and I happen to still love railroads and talk a lot about railroads. So, but I never like to say never, because you just never know. Like, you know, something might happen in 2023 and I might really feel like discussing, you know, a topic about Disneyland, maybe, you know. But, yeah. If anything, you might see me on my friend Chris's channel, you know, Chris with a K, because he's doing more Disney content stuff on there. He's asked that, you know, if he does a podcast once in a while, if I'll be on there to help talk about Disney stuff with him. I said yes, I'd do it. So if I do talk about Disney stuff, it'd probably be on his podcast. But, yeah. Let's see. Just Derek says, "Hey Alex, guess what? My birthday is coming soon." Awesome. Well, happy birthday, in case I don't say it to you on your birthday. Ships of the Century says, "If you were to sail on Queen Mary, would you rather sail on her before or after the war?" Before the war. Because I think the ship looked her most beautiful before World War II. Oops. K4RNA, thank you so much for the donation. Hey Alex and everyone on the channel, thought I might contribute to the trees anyway. Enjoy the show and to the tea. Thank you so much. Yes, I still have your last contribution for the trees. The trees will still be a while. I might have to make them all by hand. I've looked at buying them and they just don't look convincing when I look at ones that you can purchase. So I might have to make them all by hand. So it'll really help being able to afford all the supplies to build them. Making trees is not easy, but it'll look great though when it's done. Linus of Pass says, I think the reason why no one bought the Queen Mary's lifeboats is because the city had too many rules for what you could do with them. Well, they were being sold for free, actually. They were not for purchase. They were being given away. The reason why no one got them was because there wasn't enough time to set up a way to get them. You know, when you think about it, they're really big. They're 12 feet wide. That's wider than a car lane in the United States. In the United States, the widest car lanes are maybe 11 feet wide. But that lifeboat would be larger than that. Or I think some of the widest lanes are 12 feet, but nevertheless, when you're driving in a truck, you're sometimes weaving in the lane, and so that requires the lifeboat to be considered a wide load. And because of that, you have to get permits for every city and county you drive through with a wide load. That takes time to acquire. The city only gave people 30 days at first, and QMI Restore the Queen, they came in and they said, look, extend that. Actually, I should specify it was Steve, who was in the chat earlier, my friend Steve. He was the one, while still in capacity at QMI Restore the Queen, who emailed the city and said, you know, we need more time. I think it was also Mary Rower as well who did that, if I'm remembering everybody correctly. But yes, so QMI Restore the Queen did contact the city and said, hey, extend that, please. We need more time. So they said, okay, well, here's another 30 days. So a total of 60 days. When in actuality, a museum that doesn't usually have all that money sitting in the bank to spend on things like moving one of those giant lifeboats, they need anywhere from 6 months to 12 months at minimum to acquire the lifeboat, to figure out a plan for restoration, to figure out how they're going to move the lifeboat and get it to where it needs to be, that takes anywhere from 6 to 12 months at least. And the city gave them 2 months. So nobody was able to come up with a game plan fast enough, especially because the city, the lifeboats were a liability because they had lead paint on them. So the city wanted to know, if anybody's going to acquire the lifeboat, we need to have a game plan as to what you're going to do with the lifeboat and how you're going to take care of it, because we don't want it to be, this big horrible thing where there's lead paint everywhere. And so all that just takes time, and there just really wasn't enough time given for someone to acquire the lifeboat. And so the media likes to print like, oh, nobody was interested. It's like, no, there were a lot of people interested. There were at least 8 parties, including QMI Restore the Queen, who contacted the city saying we're interested in acquiring a lifeboat. And that slowly dwindled down as the reality set in that there just wasn't enough time to get the lifeboat off the property in the way that the city wanted. So eventually, nobody stayed to acquire the lifeboat. Nobody could. And I think the last organization was QMI Restore the Queen. And they were the last people standing. But the city said, well, your game plan doesn't meet our requirements. And of course it didn't, because there was only 2 months to organize it, when we needed more like 6 to 12 months. And so in the end, they were just like, okay, well, nobody meets the criteria, so, And it was QMI Restore the Queen, I believe Steve Ablonsi, who contacted them and said, hey, if you're going to destroy lifeboats, at least try to save more than just the 3 that you were talking about. So the city did agree to save 5 more lifeboats. I believe besides the 3 that are with the ship right now, there's an extra 5 that was put away in storage, and the rest were the ones that were destroyed, as you guys have probably seen on camera. So that's kind of the whole story with the lifeboats. Let's see. Top Impressive says, Alex, I wonder why some of the ships from the late 1920s were funnel-shorted, such as the RMS Strathnaver. She was originally a 3-funneled liner, but was converted to a single-funneled ocean liner. A lot of it has to do with re-engineing the ships. A lot of it has to do with reboilering the ships as well. So I do know that there were a few ships that had, like, let's say 4 funnels and were reduced down to 3. Some that had 3 reduced down to 2. And a lot of it had to do with reboilering. So, especially because in the 1920s, there was a big conversion going on where a lot of the coal-fired ships were being converted to oil. So some of them needed all new boilers altogether, because some boilers were designed for burning coal and not burning oil. So a lot of the times they had to be replaced. Olympic was one of those ships that got a simple conversion done. It didn't require removing any funnels, but certain ships they did, and then I know that there were certain ships that actually got converted to motor vessels. So some ships, they removed the steam systems altogether and then converted them to diesel-powered motor ships, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of that going on, and it's hard for me to specifically speak about RMS Strathnaver, but I can say maybe one of those things is probably what happened to it. The Jagoti Show says, what were you looking to bid on eBay? So I really wanted to get a set of log cars for this model railroad, and I can build them myself, but it would cost the same price as just buying them from a company that already makes them. I know, because, while they would be made of wood, and I can do that easily out of wood for free, I still would need to buy the wheels and stuff like that, and then it would take a long time to build all of them. So I thought, if it's going to cost the same amount as just buying a set of prefabricated log cars for the railroad, then I'd rather do that. So I went on eBay. I hate doing the bid process because sometimes you're paying way more than you need to, but this was one that was going for a cheap price. And I was like, okay, this is too good to pass up. So at 5:06 it was gonna be sold. So I wanted to be there last minute, put in a bid just a few dollars over the bid that was there, and I was answering a question and I forgot. And so I missed it. But I am one of those people that believes, if I missed something, it probably wasn't meant to be. So I might have to just build them myself. And if I have to, that's what I'll do. Merry Christmas, Nomadic Traveler. Ryan G says, love all the work on your layout. Thanks for going live all the time. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you like the layout. Yeah, there's lots more work to do on it. Ships of the Century says, would you want to have sailed on Queen Mary's last voyage? That's hard to say. When you say last voyage, do you mean on the trip from Southampton to Long Beach, or do you mean the last voyage from Southampton to New York and back? Because if you're talking about from New York to Southampton, the very last one, the 1000th and first crossing, then yeah, I would have wanted to. But if you're talking about the voyage from Southampton to Long Beach, I don't know. Because the heat when going through the tropics was so bad, it literally killed a person. And a lot of other people were suffering from, heat syncope and stuff like that. Like, the heat was so bad. And it lasted for so long because they were crossing the ocean on the equator. So instead of just going straight down and across the equator, it would have taken like a day. But because they were going across the ocean at the same time, it lasted several days. So, I don't know. The heat was so bad, I don't know if I would have wanted to do it. I mean, there were people that when they got to Rio de Janeiro, there were people that got off the ship and never got back on again. They left. They went home by plane because they were like, that is ridiculous, So, I don't know. Don't know. Pete and Harley, thank you so much for the donation. Alex, happy holidays, and thank you for these live streams. A question, Mauretania, Lusitania, and Aquitania were all built without a well deck, yet Queen Mary had a well deck. Why this change? Why did this change? That's something I'll have to look at and understand better. I think that... I don't know. I mean... Here's where I'm going to have to guesstimate because I am not that well versed in Mauretania, Lusitania, and Aquitania's history. I'm still barely learning about it. But from what I have learned, I believe Lusitania was once pounded by a really tall wave. The wave came up over the bow, smashed into the forward superstructure, and just destroyed the forward superstructure of the ship. Thankfully, they were still able to sail to port. But I think that had an effect on how they thought maybe the ship should be designed. They had avoided putting in a forward well deck, and I think that they decided that there was the next big ship would probably have to have it. So I don't know. I think with Queen Mary, they thought, you know what, here's our chance to fix that problem. With Queen Elizabeth, they didn't have to worry as much about that problem because they realized that the ship was so tall that very few waves could make it over the bow. But also any that did, the forward superstructure of Queen Elizabeth was so strong that I don't think they had to worry too much about anything that happened to it, like with the Lusitania. That is entirely my guess on why. But I could not tell you for certain why those three ships did not have a well deck, yet Queen Mary was given one. So, I don't know. The Ocean Channel says, if Queen Mary was to capsize like the Poseidon, would it stay afloat? Also, my video on the movie was taken down due to copyright because Disney owns the Poseidon Adventure now. I see. Would the Queen Mary capsize? Wait. Would it stay afloat? No. I have a hard time believing that it would. Because it might stay afloat for a while, but not permanently. No. I think the reason why is because when a ship is upside down, there is a lot of ways for water to get in the ship. And as more water fills the ship, the heavier the ship becomes and the lower in the water it wants to sink, which introduces it to more areas that come in contact with the water. So for instance, it would start off with, you know, the cowl vents on the top of the ship, as well as any of the weaker windows. Believe it or not, a lot of the large windows on the Queen Mary were really quite strong, but nevertheless, they were not designed to be, you know, 30, 40 feet underwater or more, you know, depending on how deep the ship sits when it's first rolled over. But they were not designed to withhold that much water, you know, 40 or 50 feet down. So they would burst. Water would rush in, especially through the ventilation system, and that, like I said, would weigh down the ship and just keep bringing it down to the point where the water would pull the ship down so hard, and air would collect in the hull, and the air would eventually burst out of the hull. That's what happened to, it was the HMS Curacao, after it was struck by Queen Mary and the first half was going down, the bow half of the ship was going down, it went down breakage first with the tip of the bow facing up. When that happened, the air inside the ship was compressed all the way into the bow, and it compressed so hard it blew the forecastle deck off the ship, just blew it open. And that was a deck that was reinforced with riveted steel. So just blew that open and all the air came rushing out. And so that's what would happen with the Queen Mary, is that there would be, the air would find a weak spot in the hull and just blow a hole in the hull, and then that would let the final air out of the ship and she would completely sink down. That probably would have happened to the SS Poseidon if the movie didn't end right there, you know? So, because I think all the events of the movie took place over one night. So that's what makes the movie kind of plausible. It's like, oh, if it did roll over, maybe it would have sat there for a couple hours, but maybe. But then it eventually would have just, yeah, sank. Especially when they cut open that hole in the hull to let themselves out. Yeah, I think that would have let out the final air. The people probably would have been like, like forced out of the ship as if the ship was spitting them out. Let's see. Tyler says, Alex, thank you for that little detail I missed on Queen Mary. Didn't you see the people's feet on the top windows in the observation lounge? Oh, I didn't know you can see people's feet on the top windows. Yeah. Oh boy, I answered that a long time ago. But yeah. Liners the passes. I think a few rooms on the Queen Mary can easily be restored, like the library and the dining rooms, because they have the wood paneling still intact and a lot of the original furniture is still on board. Yes, indeed, it can. Did you know in the 2010s the observation bar was restored and they got rid of the awful light blue and then restored the maroon red color? They also got some replica round bar tables too. Yes, indeed, I did know that. Peden says, thank you for your well-deck thoughts. You're welcome. Chris says, RMS Lusitania was hit by a rogue wave that was about 75 feet high. Yeah. But I think that's why they decided Queen Mary should have a well deck. I mean, that's just, you know, that's my personal opinion based off of what little I know currently. If anybody here knows the actual reason why Queen Mary had a well deck, but Mauretania, Lusitania, Aquitania didn't, let me know. I'd like to know. I don't know everything about ships. But yeah, I'd definitely like to know. Alright, so we've been doing this for so long, my tea is cold. Ooh, doesn't taste good when it's cold. So, yeah. That's okay. I really wasn't hungry today. That's why I didn't make sandwiches or anything, like, because I'm for some reason just not that hungry right now. I didn't even eat the biscuits I set out for the tea. So, I'll have those later. They don't go to waste. They never do. But I'll have them later. But yeah, so let's see. Now, I was going to say for 2023, there's going to be a lot of changes coming to the channel. Not big changes, just good things, actually. So among those there's going to be a lot more ocean liner content. Now, you have to remember that I've only been researching ocean liners for the last 3 years. And even then, it hasn't been consistent. You know, basically, whenever I have free time, I try to read a book, I try to read an article, I try to absorb things where I can here and there, and that's usually in between working on projects for Queen Mary videos. So it has taken a while, and I still don't know enough about ocean liners to make full documentaries about them. It's not something you can just, you know, spend a weekend Googling and then just slap together a video. It takes a long time to produce those documentaries. So, you know, and I'm doing all the work of a small team by just doing it myself. So, so what I'm thinking is, at first, the other ocean liner videos will start off as general fun fact videos. So there will be facts about how, you know, Mauretania became, like, you know, the first super liner to have, you know, steam turbine engines, and the achievement of that and what it means for the ocean liner business and industry. There'll be videos about, you know, things about ships that you probably never thought about, like the portholes and, you know, how they were built and stuff like that. And so it'll be a lot of stuff like that. And then I'll move on as I learn more and more about each individual ship. I'll try to produce more videos that talk specifically about their history. One in particular that I've been working on for many months is RMS Oceanic from 1899. I have only one book on that ship, and I've been reading some articles on the ship, so I'm hoping that that's sufficient enough to give me the knowledge I need to make a video about it. We'll see. I guess the ocean liner community will be the judge of that. But I am doing the best I can. So 2023, you'll see more ocean liner videos coming out, not just Queen Mary videos, as well as everybody voted that they want to see the model railroad videos here on this channel. I had thought about dusting off an old channel that I had that was dedicated to model railroads, but everybody said do it here on this channel. So, and to be honest, my railroad videos do get more views on this channel than they would at the other one. So I'm kind of like, all right, let's do it on this channel. So all the work, all the progress of the model railroad will be done on this channel. Another thing, too, is that I will occasionally make videos of historic places and things. I'm still interested in doing that. It just won't be very often. And then I know a lot of people have been wondering about the UK trip. When is that happening? I have to save up the money first. I do not make a lot of money, so therefore when I save, it takes a while. But I have matched the amount of money that people have donated towards the UK trip on the Queen Mary 2 that I plan to do sometime. So people donated about $1,000 so far. I've matched that dollar for dollar. Except yesterday, someone donated another $30, I think. So they're $30 ahead of me. But yeah, so I'm saving just as much of my money as people are donating out of the goodness of their hearts, just because they want to see that content happen. I'm not asking anybody to donate for me. You can do it if you wish to support the channel, but nobody has to do it. And I'm saving my own money to help with that. So I was hoping that maybe I would have enough money by now that maybe in spring I'd go to New Orleans and film some of the history of New Orleans. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, and that's okay. I'll save that for some other time. I'm just going to save up money for the UK trip aboard the Queen Mary 2. And hopefully by fall of 2023, I'll have all the money I need, and I can then book the trip for 2024. And then, yeah, and so my friend Chris will be there with me, and we'll just film so much stuff to talk about all kinds of history, ships, buildings, places, all that kind of stuff, especially vlogs on board the Queen Mary 2. I know a lot of people love to see that kind of stuff, and that's that's exactly what I want to do. So there'll be a lot of that. But then, yeah, the final bit of news for 2023 is that I am pretty much calling it quits on the Disney content. I already did earlier this year. I've only produced 2 pieces of Disney content in the whole of 2022. But I think I'm officially calling it for 2023. I don't see myself producing any more Disney content unless it's to combine all my Disneyland Railroad videos into one big video that people will enjoy with better audio quality and 4K images. Because now I have the ability to upgrade images to 4K, and I think 4K looks better on a big screen, so that might be the only thing. But yeah, so that is the news for what's happening in 2023. Let's see. Liners of the past. I know why Queen Mary had a well deck, but the question was, why didn't Mauretania, Lusitania, and Aquitania have it? Was there a reason? So I know why Queen Mary has a well deck. It's in my video about Queen Mary, A Whole Lot to Know. I love that title. Ships of Century says, why wasn't Queen Mary fitted with a Lido deck pool like Queen Elizabeth was in the refit? Because, and that's an easy question, because Queen Mary was not very comfortable and not very good at doing cruises. So Queen Elizabeth was, towards the end of her life, was designated as a cruising ship during the winter months. So when the ocean travel would get slower in the winter months, they would instead have the Queen Elizabeth do trips to the Canary Islands. And they tried that with Queen Mary for, I think, 1 season. Literally 1 season. Her air conditioning could not keep up with the temperatures. The temperatures weren't that bad, but nevertheless, her air conditioning could not keep up. Queen Mary was just a slightly older ship, so it just didn't work out very well. They thought Queen Elizabeth did a much better job, although she was a quite old ship as well. So they thought, all right, well, we can make Queen Elizabeth a little bit better by giving her a Lido deck. And since Queen Mary, they didn't plan on having her do any more cruises, they decided not to give her a pool, because again, that's a huge investment. So the pool did help the Queen Elizabeth just a little bit better at doing those cruises. But by 1967, Queen Elizabeth was doomed. You know, there were just better ships out there that could do cruising better than Queen Elizabeth could. So, but yeah, that is why Queen Mary did not get a Lido deck. But I almost wish that she did, and the reason why is because if the Queen Mary did have a Lido deck, the way Queen Elizabeth did, Queen Mary would make for an awesome hotel. Everybody wants to have a pool at a hotel. And Queen Mary has only 1 existing pool left. That is the first class swimming pool. Yeah, it could be converted for hotel use. I'm not sure how good that will look or how well that will go over. I'm not sure how invasive it will be to the history of the room. But what I do know is that if the Lido deck had still existed, that could be heavily modified to be modern. And I think it could have worked. It really could have, I think. So, yeah. Let's see. Transit Biker says, have you thought about a collab with Oceanliner Designs? I'm always open to doing collaborations with other YouTubers. But I mean, I'm not very imaginative, so I don't know what I could do that would work well with what he does. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what we would collaborate on, to be totally honest. But I'm always open to doing collaborations with other YouTubers. Line of the Past says they could also restore the first class cabins, like enhance them by adding replica curtains, replica carpet, or stuff like that. They could. I will say this, though. I never thought Queen Mary's original curtains and carpets in the cabins looked nice. They didn't match what the cabins looked like. So I myself am not... I'm not too... I don't know the words. I don't feel that that would be 100% the right decision. I think that if they had a pattern of curtains and carpets for the stateroom cabins that looked period appropriate, but also went really well with the design of the cabins, and each cabin looks different, then I think that could work. But the original curtains and carpets that were in the cabins, I didn't think that they looked nice. Yeah, so... And there were some news reports that said the same thing as well. They would say, oh, the Queen Mary looks weird, you know, the colors don't match, you know. So, yeah, there were some things like that, but... Let's see... Liners of the Past says Lusitania, Mauretania, and Aquitania didn't have a well deck because the third class open space was at the stern. Yes, but well decks are not just for open spaces. Well decks serve the purpose of breaking apart waves. So it didn't matter whether or not they were using it for an open space for third class. What mattered is, why didn't they think those ships needed a well deck for breaking waves? That's the question. Let's see here. Because when you think about it, on Queen Elizabeth, the third class open space was still up on the forecastle deck. And they didn't have a well deck there, but they still had it. So obviously, an open space for third class was not the main driving reason for having a well deck. But George Paleo Nerd says, sup, Alex? Hello. Ships of Century says, what happened to the second class pool on Queen Mary? It was removed along with a lot of E-deck to make space for the new lobby of the engine room exhibits. So to this day, when you go to the stern of the ship to enter the engine rooms and see also the steering gear room, all that, you're entering through the new lobby. And that lobby was made out of parts of D and E decks. And E deck is where the pool was. And to this day, where the pool was is currently where the 4D theater is on Queen Mary. All right, folks. Well, thank you all for staying this long. And so Sunday is Christmas. I will not be doing a tea time on Christmas. I'm not even sure I'll be able to do it on Saturday either, because Saturday I'll probably be very busy preparing for Christmas. I don't know. We'll have to see how things go. we might end up having to wait to do any kind of live stream till next Wednesday, so a whole week from now. But if not, maybe there'll be like another working on the model railroad live stream during that time. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, so I think that's all I had to tell you today. When it comes to Queen Mary shell plating being restored, will they completely remove the lifeboat davits since they are no longer needed? Technically, the lifeboat davits are still needed, and the reason why is because the lifeboat davits are part of the support system of Sundeck. So they are what keeps Sundeck held firmly in place. So actually, whether or not they need to remove the davits for the restoration, they will still need to put them back in. But I don't think they'll remove them. What Steve was talking about was they will need to cut off the bottom portion, the rusted part of the davits, which are sitting on promenade deck, and then they will install a new plating that holds up the whole davit. So the davits are actually still necessary. Unlike the QE2, Queen Elizabeth II, they removed the davits off that ship because the davits were not part of the structural support of the promenade, the outdoor promenade on that ship. So, but for original Queen Mary, the davits are very much necessary for the stability of the structure of the sun and promenade decks. So they do have to keep them. All right. But anyway, folks, thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you all next time. Merry Christmas if I don't get to say it to you. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. And any others I forgot to say, then happy holidays. But see you later. Bye-bye.